ESPN officially announced a treasure trove of MTEs on Thursday, so we're going to rank them all to let you know which events are appointment television.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Friday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade, and you are joining us at the place to get your college basketball content 5 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, all year long. Want to thank all of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us on our college basketball Discord channel. There is a link in the show notes if you haven't checked it out yet. Free to join. You can come hang out with us talking college hoops there all the time. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by Ultimate GM. The Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code Locked On College Football or Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, Isaac, ESPN gave us plenty of content for today. 9 men's MTEs were officially announced by ESPN on Thursday. Most of them, as most MTEs are over that feast week and Thanksgiving leading up to the holiday.
That's my turkey noise, Andy. You're welcome.
People probably got that, but if they didn't, I'm glad you explained it anyway.
I want to hear do you have a turkey noise that you can make?
You know what? I don't. I think yours was perfect, so that we're just going to roll with that one. There are a couple of the Feast Week events, or the MTEs, that take place over Thanksgiving or over Christmas as well. But what we're going to do, pretty simple. We're going to rank them. 3 in one segment, 3 in segment 2, 3 in segment 3. We're going to talk about all 9 of these MTEs. We're going to talk about our favorite matchups. We're going to give some predictions as to who we think is going to win. All sorts of fun stuff here. Lots of events. We did talk about a few of them already. The Jimmy V, we'll talk about that one a little bit more, but I know Isaac covered that one on a previous episode. So some stuff that we've already kind of touched on, but this is a lot of great college basketball games that we're going to see in the non-conference slate this year. So we want to make sure that we hit on all of these. Isaac, why don't you get us started with what is pretty clearly the top ranked of these 9 MTEs announced by ESPN this week.
That's right. We all know the matchups for this thing already, but the good news is that we got the tip times. Hooray! Champions Classic, which I miss being right at the very start of the season. I'd love to get it back there. Tips off on Tuesday, November 12th. It also ends on Tuesday, November 12th. I made it seem like it's longer than that. It'll be at State Farm in Atlanta. Kansas, Michigan State will lead the way at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Both games on ESPN, by the way, and then followed by Kentucky and Duke, 9 p.m. Eastern. Andy, for those who wish that we were getting the Kansas-Duke matchup because they should be loaded, hang tight. We're going to get there in just a minute. Andy, by the way, tickets for this thing I read on Thursday will be on sale about a month from now, late September. So, man, make sure you snatch that up because, man, these games like this are wild to be. Andy, as you look at this, Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky, Duke, you're absolutely right. There is no other event of these 9 that could be number 1. So I think it's probably safe to just go ahead and go straight to winner predictions in this event. Folks, This is not a move on to a second day of games.
Yeah, for me, I'm going Kansas and Duke. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think they're 2 of the top 5 teams in the country in most preseason rankings. No disrespect to Michigan State or Kentucky. I think they're both going to be good programs. Kentucky, obviously, no roster continuity. So asking them to win a massive non-conference game 8 days into the season when they've probably only played 1 or 2 games. I haven't looked at their schedule, but they won't have played a whole lot of basketball together. So that's a really tough ask for them. Yes, Duke has a lot of, doesn't have a ton of roster continuity either, but I still think that that's a tough ask for Kentucky. So give me Duke in that one. Give me Kansas over Michigan State. Again, this is not a tournament, so we will not see then Kansas and Duke square off in a championship game in this event, but we are going to see Kansas and Duke play each other a little bit later, and we will get to that.
Yeah, Andy, the Kansas-Michigan State game felt easier for me to pick. Like with Kentucky and Duke, I think one of the storylines that we've talked a lot about is because Duke will be relying on some young talent, but getting a couple guys back like a Tyrese Proctor to lead the show, they have more continuity than does Kentucky. But can Kentucky, a lot of who they bring in are older guys with more experience. So that could be a little bit of an advantage to Kentucky, but I think ultimately Duke does win. I'm right with you on that one. Andy, next, what is our second ranked MTE?
Yeah, we got the Jimmy V here, and I know it was talked about on Thursday's show. For those of you who listen to Locked On College Basketball on Thursday, I know Isaac talked about the Jimmy V here, but it's at Madison Square Garden. We talked about how most of these events are over Thanksgiving week, and yet here the first couple ones we're talking about are not, in fact, over that week. This event will take place on Tuesday, December 10th, again, at the Madison Square Garden. It's just a two-game series. Again, it's not an actual tournament of sorts here. We got Miami playing Tennessee in the first game. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Both games on ESPN. Following that game will be Michigan against Arkansas, 9 p.m. on ESPN. Again, a pair of new coaches, or coaches to new programs, at least, for Dusty May in Michigan, and of course John Calipari at Arkansas. That makes that game more exciting to me, although I think Miami and Tennessee is going to be an intriguing matchup as well. Miami didn't perform at expectation last year, but I don't think Coach L is going to have that team down for too much longer. Tennessee obviously loses a ton of talent with Vescovi out the door, with Dalton Connect out the door. Curious to see how that looks for them. I'll give my prediction here, Isaac, and then I'll throw it over to you. I think Tennessee is going to beat Miami. I think they're still a better team, even with Miami hopefully kind of moving back in the right direction. And give me Arkansas over Michigan. Two fun teams. There's a lot of intrigue in that matchup. Dusty May playing his old player in John L. Davis, of course, Vlad Golden, also from FAU on that Michigan roster. But I think Arkansas is going to be more equipped to win this game. So I think Tennessee and Arkansas, you got a pair of SEC teams taking on some big victories on that day.
I'm right with you, Andy. I think it's an SEC sweep at MSG. Interestingly, I'll mention two quick things I said on Thursday's show in case people missed out on it. FAU played in this event last year, so Dusty May coaching in it back-to-back years. Also, Andy, I said I would love to see some jumbo front court matchups in the Michigan-Arkansas game where we get like both some Zvonimir Ivisic and Jonas Adu. Heck, throw Trevin Brazil in there at the same time. And Michigan playing both Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf at the same time, which I think they legitimately might play together a lot this season. And so, man, that would be a fun little front court battle. So anyway, yes, right with you, SEC sweep.
Number 3, Jumpman Invitational. These games will be at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, all three of the first ones we're talking about not actually taking place over Feast Week. This event is taking place Tuesday, December 17th and Wednesday, December 18th. There is a men's and a women's bracket here for Jumpman. On the men's side, you got North Carolina and Florida taking each other on the 17th, and then Michigan and Oklahoma on the men's side. Women's side, you got Michigan versus Oklahoma on Tuesday, and then North Carolina, Florida on Wednesday. Same teams, fun stuff. Isaac, who do you got winning these two games here on the men's side for this event?
On Tuesday night, give me North Carolina over Florida. I think Florida is going to be good, but I think North Carolina has a little bit too much there. On the men's side, it's funny, we're talking about Michigan here again. And whereas I don't think they prevail in the Jimmy V Classic, I do think they prevail in Jumpman Invitational. Oklahoma came into this event last year undefeated. Not so much this year. I don't predict Oklahoma will be as good. And so Dusty May and the Wolverines get a win in that one.
Yeah, give me Carolina and Michigan in this one as well. I really am a big believer in that Florida team, and it's kind of a similar situation of like both teams have a fair amount of returners back. Obviously, Clayton's back for Florida, RJ Davis back for Carolina. So I do think that both teams are going to have some really fun guard play. I have questions about both teams' front courts, quite frankly. I think that's going to be an interesting part of this game is kind of how that shakes out. But yeah, Carolina's the better team. They're the deeper team. I think they're going to prevail there. And I'm with you. I don't think Oklahoma is going to be all that competitive this year in this event. And I think unless Dusty May is really struggling, I think Michigan's.
Also of note on the Jumpman Classic, this is the third year. So now we've had a full rotation of this round robin. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with this event going forward, since now Oklahoma and Florida are in the same conference and you cannot have two conference foes in the same MTE. So folks, keep your eyes peeled on that ahead of the 25-26 season. Now, Andy, we just talked about Duke and Kansas in the Champions Classic, and wonderfully enough, not only do they highlight that event, but they will be the headliners and carry the Vegas showdown as well, getting paired with an unlikely duo of teams there. But hey, it's Vegas. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about the ultimate college football head coach coming straight for you, Locked On College basketball fans. I want to take a moment to give you a heads up about this brand new game that I think you're going to love as much as Andy and I do. Again, it's called the Ultimate College Football Head Coach. And in this amazing simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of your favorite team? Well, from recruiting players to hiring the coaching staff and overseeing training camps and giving out scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program, and it's all in your hands. Can you handle that pressure? Well, here's what I really love about it. You're responsible for calling the offensive plays. So your strategy not only determines the success of your season, but will shape the future and legacy of the program. Best of all, this game is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline so that you can play on the go whenever and however you want. And of course, you know that Andy and I have a special offer for all you Locked On College basketball folks. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store and receive a free boost for your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk because it's going to get you off to a strong start. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com or just look it up in the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. Andy, we've just finished off ranking the top 3 of these MTEs that popped up on Thursday from ESPN. So now, folks, we're going to give you number 4 through 6. And Andy, I'm going to let you tell us number 4. But look, this is the biggest exercise in quality over quantity on this entire list.
Yeah, we set out the idea of like, let's rank them. That'll be fun. And we threw them all on a sheet and we were looking at them and it was like, okay, some of these are 4 teams, some of them are 8 teams, but we can kind of figure out how to rank them. And then pretty quickly we looked at this one and we're like, oh, what do we do with this field? Here's the team. So the event, Vegas Showdown, of course, it is in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena. It is on November 26th, Tuesday. There's 2 games and it is not, these 2 teams are not playing to then play each other in a championship. And I think that's
but boy, if they were,
we should be very clear about that because it would be quite confusing if that were the case. The first game and the reason that this is as high as it is in this rankings, Duke, Kansas, what an incredible matchup. John Shire's Blue Devils club versus Bill Self and the Jayhawks, 2 teams that are going to be ranked in the top 5, almost certainly when the preseason rankings come out. That game is at 9 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. The next game and the fact that Duke, Kansas is the undercard with this game being the next game, very odd scheduling here. The final game, 11:30 Eastern time, Seattle U versus Furman. That game will be on ESPN U. They're moving it off of ESPN. And look, some of you know this, you're longtime listeners. I'm a Seattle U alumni. I do not want to be discrediting that program or Furman for that matter, but this is a weird combo of teams. Like there's just no other way to look at it. Again, to clarify, if Duke beats Kansas, they do not then play the winner of Seattle U Furman. Although Duke and Seattle U are actually playing each other later this season. Seattle U is going to Cameron Indoor to play there. So it could in theory be a matchup between Duke and Seattle U, or that they will play each other and they could also be the 2 winners of this game. That's who I'm projecting. I think Duke takes care of Kansas, although that is going to be a really good game. And I think Seattle U is going to beat Furman in that one. But what a unique pairing of games to happen here on this event on November 26th.
Yeah, Andy, what's fun, I think it actually makes sense the order they've put them in because the Seattle Furman game is going to be 11:30 Eastern time.
Yeah.
And so I hear that and I understand it. I'm with you on neither of these games. This is our first departure from one another. Give me Furman over Seattle. And it's fun because literally 2 weeks to the night after the Champions Classic, we get what hopefully would have been the championship game had they played that one out. I'm going to go with Kansas in this one. I think this is where the experience wins out and the coaching of, I think Coach Shire is a great coach, but look, it's Bill Self. And so give me Kansas, give me Furman. at the Vegas Showdown. Those are your champions. That means Duke's in third place behind Furman. That's kind of funny to think about it that way. Or Kansas if Duke, either way, that's pretty funny. So Andy, let's go on to our 5th ranked event. This is actually one of 2 events happening at the same venue, the same 2 days on Thanksgiving. Hey, finally we're getting to Thanksgiving. Actually, well, I guess that the Vegas Showdown was Thanksgiving week.
It's feast week, just not Thanksgiving.
Feast week. There we go. So, Andy, ESPN Events Invitational is our 5th ranked MTE of these 9. I'm getting TRL vibes there. State Farm Field House at the Wide World of Sports Complex in Kissimmee, Florida. These games will take place actually on Thanksgiving Day, and then we actually do play this bracket out, and so the championship and third place game on Black Friday. So, Andy, we've got at noon Eastern on ESPN2, Minnesota and Wichita State, and then followed by Florida and Wake Forest at 2:30 on ESPN. Andy, before we pick the winners, the champion of this event, I want to just say that I think these are weird pairing choices. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. And this is the first time I noticed that the first game, the Minnesota Wichita State's on ESPN2, while Florida Wake Forest is on ESPN. That feels like it's relevant to that portion of the conversation. But yeah, obviously, I think both, I guess maybe not obviously, but I project both Florida and Wake Forest to be better teams this upcoming season than both Minnesota and Wichita State. So it is kind of an odd pairing. Having said that, I think Florida Wake Forest is a fun game. I just think we would have probably ended up seeing this in the championship had it played out in a different way. But I do have Florida beating Wake Forest. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that's a fun matchup. Hunter Salas versus Walter Clayton. Like there's a lot of, Elijah Martin for Florida's in that mix too, with Chase Hildreth coming back for the Deacons. Like there's a lot of intrigue in that matchup, but give me Florida in that one. Give me Minnesota over Wichita State, and then give me Florida over Minnesota in the championship again. That's not a bad matchup. Not trying to say it's not a good or a fun game, but I think Florida Wake Forest is probably a better game. So it's a little bit odd to see the way it was put together.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Andy, I am also going to go with Minnesota. And I tell you, I've really waffled on Florida and Wake Forest. And I mean, because it's great guard play, as you were just alluding to. I think I'm actually going to go with Wake because I think Hunter Salas is the best player on the floor, in my opinion. And I think that kind of wins out in a game where we talked about Florida earlier. And it's like front court, who knows what it's going to be there. So I'm going to actually take Wake Forest over Minnesota in the championship.
Number 6, the final one here in the second segment, the Charleston Classic. Charleston is a team we're going to talk about a little later in the show. They are not in this event. The event is, of course, taking place in Charleston, South Carolina at the TD Arena. Again, another one that is the kind of right before Feast Week. It's like it's an appetizer, if you will, right before the Feast Week events, Thursday, November 21st. That's when the first round games take place. This is an 8-team MTE, so we got a lot of basketball games on Thursday, Friday. They're off on Saturday. Then they actually play the championship, and the third place game, fifth place game, and seventh place game are all taking place on Sunday, November 24th. Here are your matchups. Then, Isaac, I'll throw it to you to tell me who you think is going to win them. We got Miami versus Drake at noon on ESPN2 or ESPNU. Then you got Oklahoma State versus Florida Atlantic, 2:30 p.m. Again, also either ESPN2 or U. And then you got on the other side of the bracket, you got Nevada versus Vanderbilt at 5 p.m. on ESPN2, and then Seton Hall taking on VCU at 7:30 on ESPNU. Really, really interesting matchups here. A unique collection of teams. I'm very intrigued by these games.
Me too.
I'm intrigued by some of the matchups, although I'm not sure that I necessarily think they're wrong. They're just some kind of odd matchups that we got here, but I think this could go a lot of different directions. How do you think this thing's going to shake out?
What I wish is I'm so happy that the DeVries father-son combo is in West Virginia, but man, if they were still at Drake, I would absolutely love this Miami Drake matchup. I still like it, but I think Miami has a much easier time against the new head coach there for Drake on the and then I think they win that side of the bracket over either Oklahoma State or FAU. That game is perhaps the most intriguing of round one.
Coaches there too,
yeah, exactly. But what's interesting on the other side of the bracket to me is, remember, VCU actually gets back Max Shulga, who we thought was going to wind up at Villanova, and so I think they could give Seton Hall some real trouble here. but I do ultimately have Seton Hall coming out of this side of the bracket with Miami beating Seton Hall in the championship game on
I
Sunday.
also have Miami over Seton Hall in the championship. I think Nevada's a serious player here as well, though. They're a team that was very good last year, and I think managed to maintain a lot of their talent going into next year. They got some fun, intriguing guys. So I'm intrigued by Nevada over Vandy. I also love the fact that this has 4 of these 8 teams have new head coaches.
That's right.
3 of them are on one side of the bracket. The only coach who's not new on that side of the bracket is Jim Larinaga, who is in fact quite old, the opposite of new in that situation. So I think that's not the only reason I have Miami advancing, although it does help them when you're talking about early season stuff. And
especially having Nigel Pack back, right? Like,
they're not only a veteran coach, but obviously a veteran team in a lot of ways as well. And then on the other side, the only new coach there is Mark Byington at Vanderbilt, but very intrigued to see what he can do coming over from James Madison. But yeah, same with you. Give me Miami over Seton Hall in the championship. Well, Isaac, we're talking Charleston. Chris Mack is back. He returns to college hoops. He's the new head coach of the Cougars, replacing Pat Kelsey, and he's hoping to keep the train going with that program. And now the big part of that is, can they pick up a championship in the Diamond Head Classic? We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about Gametime, because going to live events is the absolute best. Music, theater, comedy, sports, whatever it may be. And folks, now that the summer is wrapping up, college sports are coming back, and I am looking forward to being able to make memories this college sports season. And great news, when you're getting tickets for this year, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And we got some college football games coming up this weekend for week 0, but next weekend is when the real big time action gets going. We got number 14 ranked Clemson and number 1 Georgia at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium on August 31st. That is going to be an incredible game. Right now, the cheapest tickets on Gametime are only $118, and the best deal, which is the great thing about Gametime Picks, $273 tickets on row 5 on the sidelines, just before the corner on the visitor's sideline. Incredible views, incredible seats for just $273 each for that matchup. That is a great deal. So folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Isaac, continuing our conversation here, 9 MTEs announced by ESPN on Thursday. We are ranking 1 through 9, all of these events on the men's side. Again, many of them taking place at or around Thanksgiving time. This is one of the latest events that you're going to see right before conference play starts in earnest across the college basketball landscape, the Hawaiian Airlines Diamond Head Classic. I always love this event, and it's rarely filled with a lot of marquee teams because the event takes place right over Christmas break. And I don't think a lot of high major teams, a lot of kind of premier blue bloody type programs really want to participate in an event over Christmas. But the teams that do play tend to be kind of fun, exciting, up and coming mid-major teams. And there's usually a fair amount of intrigue. The event takes place at Simplify Arena in Honolulu. Sunday, December 22nd is the first day of games. The championship and all of the other final games will take place on Christmas. Again, why you don't see a lot of great teams, but there's some fun ones here. The first round matchups for this 8-team event, you got Oregon State, a former high major team, unfortunately not anymore for them as they are in the WCC. They're taking on Charleston, as we mentioned before with Coach Mack, 3 p.m. on ESPNU on Sunday the 22nd. Right after that, Loyola Chicago takes on Oakland, 5 p.m. on ESPNU. And then the other side of the bracket, you got Nebraska versus Murray State at 9 p.m. on ESPN2, and Charlotte versus the host Hawaii Rainbow Warriors at 11 p.m. on ESPN2. Isaac, what do you what's your read, what's your vibe for this event and how it might shake out? Who's going to be taking home that trophy on Christmas?
I've got Nebraska winning. I want to start there because I think that side of the bracket is not as intriguing to me. I'm really interested in the top side of this bracket. Yeah. Like I actually have Charleston beating Oregon State, Loyola Chicago beating Oakland, and then in what I think is maybe the game of this tournament, Loyola Chicago against Charleston.
Yeah.
that game is very intriguing to me. I'm really interested to see because Charleston has had a great run under Pat Kelsey. Obviously, Chris Mack is a phenomenal basketball coach. No reason to expect he's lost a step. But Loyola Chicago kind of picked back up last year, and I think they'll keep going. So I do have the Loyola there over Charleston, but then Nebraska beating up on Loyola in the championship.
Yeah, that's the same championship I have, but I agree with you on all accounts. John Morant's not walking through the door at Murray State. Charlotte and Hawaii doesn't move the needle for me all that much. So Nebraska feels like the more obvious pick to come out of that side of the region. But I think you could make an argument for all four of these teams on the top side potentially coming out of it. I think Oregon State's probably the weakest team. Maybe Oakland's the weakest team. They lost a lot of players from last year's very kind of exciting team that made that run, that beat Kentucky, of course. But I think Loyola Chicago and Charleston is going to be the matchup there. I think Loyola Chicago wins, and I think Nebraska beats them in the championship. So same setup here on my end, but I think there's going to be some fun games there particularly in the top half of that bracket.
Man, going to be a lot of fun. All right, Andy, we move now to our penultimate of these MTEs. What do you got for us at number 8?
Yeah, Myrtle Beach Invitational at the HTC Center. This one also in South Carolina and Conway. Again, this is going to be kind of the week, another appetizer, the week right before we get into the actual feast week. The games start on Thursday, the 21st of November, roll through to that Sunday, the 24th. There's some fun teams in this one, but it's not as great. Again, we're kind of down towards the bottom here. A lot of mid-major teams, in fact, all mid-major teams here, but some fun potential matchups. You got Ohio taking on Middle Tennessee State in the first game, noon on Thursday, the 21st on ESPN2 or U. South Florida, Amir Abdul-Rahim's very fun and kind of surprising team from last year. They're taking on the Pilots of Portland, 2:30 p.m. on, again, 2 or U for ESPN. Then you got on the other side of the bracket, Bradley versus Texas State at 5:30 on ESPN-U, Princeton versus Wright State at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus. That's how you know we're getting down to ESPN Plus for where these games are going to be. For me, I got South Florida winning this thing. I think that's kind of the obvious choice. Yeah. Clearly that roster overwent a ton of changes this offseason. Chris Youngblood goes to Alabama. Cason Pryor goes to Louisville. Those are just two off the top of my head. I know there's a lot of other players changing hands from that team, but Abdul-Rahim just wins. He just wins at every level, and he's continued to do that, and I think he's going to take this one here. I got him beating Princeton in the championship. Princeton's an incredibly well-coached team under Mitch Henderson, have been successful in the Ivy League for a very long time. I think they're going to play for a championship here. I think they'll give South Florida a significant run for their money, but give me the Bulls taking this thing.
Andy, the only thing I have different is I think Bradley is going to be the class of the Missouri Valley Conference this year. Drake and Indiana State, I think, both take a step back with their coaches leaving. And so I actually have Bradley over Princeton in a great game. I think that's going to be a really, really good game. But then same thing, South Florida wins over Bradley in the chip. And that sets up Andy Patton, our final MTE, the 9th one. And this is the event that takes place at the same place at the Wide World of Sports Complex. Weirdly enough, this is the event that's in prime time at the Wide World of Sports Complex, while we have our other one, the ESPN Events Invitational, which you and I ranked 5th in the afternoon on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. You and I don't think that scheduling makes sense, but you know what? The good media and TV people at ESPN know a thing or two more than us, so I'm sure there's something there going on. Andy, this event is one of those where we actually do play it through. So round 1 on Thanksgiving, round 2 on Friday. We'll be brief on this because I know we got to get out, but we've got on Turkey Day, Utah State, St. Bonaventure at 5:30 Eastern on the Deuce, and then Northern Iowa against North Texas at 8 p.m. on the U. Andy, what do you have for this one?
Yeah, give me St. Bonaventure winning this one. They're going to beat Utah State in that first game. Utah State obviously has had a lot of success last couple of years, but they keep turning over their coaches. We'll see if they can continue having success with another new coach over there. But give me the Bonnies beating Utah State and then taking on the winner of Northern Iowa and North Texas. I got North Texas winning that one, and I got the Bonnies taking a trophy back to the A-10 conference with a win over the Mean Green of North Texas.
Ooh, give me the Mean Green. You know what? This is a family pick because my wife's two very dearest friends in the world are both Mean Green alum. So I'm just going with my heart, Andy. Give me North Texas. What is up, Denton? We're making it happen for you. All right, Andy, that was a super fun show ranking these 9 MTEs that ESPN put out on Thursday. Folks, we would love to hear which of these events you're most excited about to throw down that turkey leg, leave the table, avoid all your family and not talk to them so that you can watch a great week's worth of basketball mixed in, oh, by the way, with Atlantis and Maui and all the other great stuff going on. We hope that you have a great weekend. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you go ahead and do that so you don't miss a second of Locked On College Basketball. Also, as Andy talked about earlier, we have a great Locked On College Basketball Discord that we'd love for you to come be a part of. It's free to join, 100% free. The link for that is in the show notes. As always, we want to tell you apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. I'm sure we hit on a bunch of Wildcats today. I wasn't even keeping track. We'll talk again on Monday, but until then, peace.